Before the story goes any further, pause for a moment. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the idea that even the smallest act can change a life, take a second right now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us why humanity still matters. The girl lay in a private hospital room that looked more like a luxury hotel suite than a place of suffering. Soft lights glowed on marble floors. Expensive flowers filled the air with a sweetness that couldn't mask the scent of fear, and machines whispered constant reminders that time was running out. She was only 12, her face pale, her breathing shallow, her small hand lost inside the massive grasp of her father's trembling fingers. He had built empires, crushed competitors, bent rules, and bought silence when he needed it. But now, standing beside his daughter's bed, he was just a helpless father staring at the one thing he couldn't buy: more time. The illness was rare, cruel, and relentless. Specialists from across the world had flown in. Experimental treatments had been tried. Donations large enough to fund entire hospitals had been promised. Nothing worked. The doctors spoke gently, but their words carried finality. Her body was rejecting everything. Her heart was failing. 3 days was not a prediction. It was a countdown. Outside the hospital walls, life moved on without mercy. Cars honked, vendors shouted. Rain fell on cracked sidewalks where children slept under torn cardboard. Just a few streets away, a boy named Arav spent his nights curled beside a closed shop, hugging a frayed backpack that held everything he owned. He was 14, thin as a shadow, his ribs visible beneath his faded shirt. Hunger was his constant companion, pain his familiar friend. He had no parents, no home, no one waiting for him anywhere. The streets had raised him, and the streets had taken almost everything from him except one stubborn thing: his heart. Every morning, Arav went to the same traffic signal, juggling bruised oranges or wiping windshields for coins. Most people ignored him. Some waved him away in disgust. A few threw insults sharper than hunger. Still, he smiled. Not because life was kind, but because somewhere deep inside, he believed kindness could still exist. On the second day of the countdown, the millionaire left the hospital for the first time in weeks. He couldn't breathe inside those walls anymore. The beeping machines, the quiet pity in the nurse's eyes, the suffocating knowledge that his daughter was slipping away. It all crushed him. He stepped outside, loosened his tie, and leaned against his black luxury car as rain began to fall. That was when he noticed the boy. Arav stood a short distance away, soaked, shivering, holding a cardboard sign that read nothing at all. His eyes weren't begging, they were simply watching. Watching a man who looked like he carried the weight of the world in his chest. Something about that look, curious, gentle, unafraid, cut through the billionaire's numbness. Without thinking, the man reached into his wallet and pulled out a bill worth more than the boy usually earned in a month. He held it out. Arav stared at it, then at the man, then slowly shook his head. Instead of taking the money, he pointed toward the hospital entrance and then placed a hand over his heart. The gesture confused the man. He frowned, his voice heavy as he asked what the boy wanted. Arav scribbled quickly on a scrap of paper with a broken pencil. His handwriting was uneven, but the words were clear. "I can help her." Security moved instantly, stepping between them, ready to push the boy away. The man almost allowed it, almost laughed at the absurdity. A street kid helping where the world's best doctors had failed? But something stopped him. Desperation makes room for impossible ideas. He waved the guards back and crouched to the boy's level. Arav explained in fragments, pointing to his chest, then to the hospital, then to the rain. He spoke about his grandmother, the only family he ever knew, who had once been sick in a village far away. He spoke of an old healer who had taught him breathing techniques, pressure points, and a strange combination of movement and rhythm that calmed failing hearts. Doctors had laughed at it, he said. But his grandmother had lived years longer than expected. The millionaire knew how ridiculous it sounded. He also knew his daughter had 3 days to live, and they were already halfway through the second. That night, against medical advice, legal warnings, and every rational thought, the man allowed the boy into the hospital room. Arav was cleaned, given simple clothes, his hair still damp from rain. He stood nervously beside machines that hummed like alien creatures, looking very small in that vast, sterile space. What happened next did not look like a miracle. It looked quiet. Arav sat beside the bed, began guiding the girl's breathing. Slow and rhythmic, his hands moving gently, deliberately, never touching wires or machines. Nurses watched, skeptical but silent. The father stood frozen, afraid to hope, afraid not to. Hours passed. Nothing dramatic happened, no alarms, no sudden recovery, just a slight change in the girl's breathing, a steadiness that hadn't been there before. The doctor later called it coincidence. But when morning came, the girl's vitals were marginally better, not cured, not safe, but improved. The third day arrived heavy and unforgiving. News had spread quietly through the hospital staff. Some whispered about the street boy, others shook their heads. But everyone watched the clock. Arav stayed by the girl's side, barely eating, barely sleeping, focusing with an intensity far beyond his years. The father sat nearby, suit wrinkled, eyes hollow, praying to a God he hadn't spoken to in decades. By evening, the girl opened her eyes. It was brief, weak, but undeniable. Her fingers curled slightly around her father's. Machines confirmed what hearts already knew. Something had changed. The impossible wasn't complete, but it had begun. Over the next hours, her condition stabilized enough for doctors to attempt a treatment that had been too risky before, a treatment they had dismissed because her body was too weak to endure it. Now, against all odds, she survived the procedure. Days turned into weeks. The girl slowly recovered, step by fragile step. Arav disappeared quietly one morning, leaving nothing behind except a folded piece of paper on the bedside table. It read, "She doesn't need me now." The millionaire searched the city until he found him. He offered homes, education, money beyond imagination. Arav accepted only one thing, a chance to learn, to grow, to help others the way he once helped a stranger's daughter. Years later, the girl stood on a stage beside a young man in a simple suit. She was healthy, smiling, alive. He was no longer a street kid, but he carried the same gentle eyes. Together, they opened a foundation for children who had nothing but hope. Just before this story ends, I want to ask you something special. If you believe that even the smallest person can change the biggest fate, comment the word hope below. And now, as we reach the end, if this story touched your heart, if it made you feel something deep inside, please like, comment, and share this video. Your engagement keeps stories like this alive and reminds the world that miracles sometimes wear torn clothes and walk barefoot through the rain.